Hello and welcome everyone. It's great to join you all today for our webinar. So to get us kicked off, here is a quick overview of what we'll be covering today so you have a clear roadmap for the session. We'll begin with an overview of the upcoming changes. This section sets the stage by looking at what's driving these updates and how they fit into the broader employment landscape. Next, we'll move into the federal updates. These are changes at the federal level that may affect your policies, practices, or compliance obligations, especially if you operate across several jurisdictions. From there, we'll shift to Ontario updates. This will cover the provincial developments outside of the Working for Workers Act, but still highly relevant to the day-to-day HR management. After that, we'll take a deeper dive into the Ontario's Working for Workers Act 7. We'll walk through the major provisions and what employers need to prepare for, and how these changes may impact recruitment, onboarding, and workplace policies. And finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A and additional resources. This will give you an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll share tools and reference materials that you can use after the session to support your compliance planning. By the end of this session, you should have a clear understanding of what is changing and the steps your organizations should take to get ready. So let's start with a high-level overview of the upcoming changes, so you have the context before we get into specific legislation. First, why does this matter? We're seeing a number of new federal and Ontario laws coming into effect. These changes directly influence hiring practices, compliance requirements, and overall HR operations. Staying compliant isn't just about meeting legal obligations. It also protects your organization, your employees, and your reputation. Preparing early allows organizations to avoid risk and to make any adjustments smoothly. So who's affected? These changes impact both provincially regulated employers in Ontario, particularly around job postings and recruitment requirements under the Employment Standards Act, and federally regulated employers who will see their own set of updates. So whether your organization falls under federal or provincial jurisdiction, there is something here that will require attention. Finally, the key takeaways for today. By the end of the session, you'll have a clear understanding of the requirements coming into effect. We'll walk you through practical suggestions for HR teams and managers, and we'll share tools and strategies to help you implement these changes effectively. This sets the foundation for the rest of the presentation, where we'll break down each area in more detail. So I'll pass it over to you, Navdeep.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. So let's start with a quick overview of the key federal updates shaping employment in 2026. We are seeing a significant movement on the right to disconnect policies and a series of Canada Labour Code initiatives, particularly from Employment and Social Development Canada, focused on payroll modernization, training, and workplace protections. And the federal budget 2025 introduced measures that directly impact employers, from payroll modernization pilots to upskilling programs. These updates aren't just legislative checkboxes, they reflect a broader federal push towards modernization, fairness, and employee well-being. Before we dive deeper, how many of you have already discussed the upcoming legislative changes such as right to disconnect, pay equity, or other changes in your organization? So here's a poll. I'll give you some time to answer. I'll give you 10 seconds more to respond. Okay, so thanks for sharing. It seems that for many, there is an area that is still on the horizon. Don't worry, we'll walk through that these legislative changes means potential impacts and practical steps the organization can take. So as we go each of these updates in detail, I'll highlight not only the legislative requires, but also the practical strategies you can adopt to stay ahead of compliance and strengthen workplace culture. So let's start with one of the most significant upcoming federal changes, the right to disconnect. This is all about setting boundaries for work-related communication outside the scheduled hours, giving employees a predictable downtime. Employees should not be expected to engage in work communication outside scheduled hours. Exceptions may apply in emergency situations or in critical operational needs, but these must be clearly defined in policy. This is about boundaries and balance, not eliminating flexibility, but ensuring it's voluntary and fair. A really important piece here, employees cannot be penalized for using or inquiring about their right to disconnect. So if someone chooses not to respond to messages outside their scheduled hours or even ask how the policy applies to them, the employer is prohibited from taking any form of retaliation. That means no negative consequences, no subtle penalties, and no adverse treatment tied to exercising their right to disconnect. Think of this as a cultural shift. Respecting downtime is now a legal obligation, not just a courtesy. Another key requirement is that the policy must be reviewed and updated every 3 years. This ensures it stays current and aligned with operational realities. In terms of timing, regulations are expected to be finalized sometimes in the end of 2025. Employers will have 1-year compliance window, so enforcement is likely to begin in 2026. If this isn't on your roadmap yet, this is the time. Now that we know what the right to disconnect requires, let's walk through the strategies that will help you implement it effectively and stay compliant once the enforcement begins. First, draft or update your right to disconnect policy. The policy needs to be crystal clear. It should spell out the rules, outline the legitimate exceptions, and explain the escalation process if after-hours communication is truly necessary. Think of this document as your blueprint. If the policy is vague, your compliance will be too. Second, training. So managers and staff both need to understand what the policy means in practice. For managers especially, this is about modeling behavior. Don't send late emails expecting employees to respond. The goal is to create a culture where after-hour work is genuinely optional and respected. Employee training should clearly outline expectations, exceptions, and what constitute retaliation if someone chooses not to respond after hours. And third, build a monitoring process and schedule regular reviews. This includes tracking compliance, gathering feedback on what's working or what's not working, and ensuring policy is updated at least every 3 years as required by the legislation. Workplace dynamics change quickly, so this can't be a set it and forget it policy. Ongoing review keeps it relevant and keep you compliant. So in summary, write a clear policy, train your teams, build a monitoring cycle. These steps make the right to disconnect culture a cultural shift, not just a legal requirement. Those were the key points and strategies on right to disconnect policies. Now, Victoria will guide you through the next policy update.
Thank you, Navdeep. Okay, let's look at one of the most impactful fairness-focused changes coming into force, equal pay for equal work, and the new rules for temporary help agencies. These updates directly affect compensation practices, staffing models, and how organizations use part-time or temporary labor. Equal pay for equal work under these changes, part-time, temporary, and full-time employees must receive the same pay when they're performing the same work under the same conditions. For example, if a part-time cashier does the same tasks as a full-time cashier, they must be paid the same hourly rate. For HR managers, this means reviewing job descriptions, tightening role expectations, and ensuring pay grids that clearly reflect equal work. Next, temporary help agencies. Agencies can less than its own employees for the same role. This closes a loophole where agency staff earned significantly less for identical work. For employers, expect cost alignments between agency and direct hires, and expect agencies to adjust pricing to meet these requirements. Employees now also have the right to request a pay review if they believe they're not being paid equally. And employers must respond to these requests within 90 days. This increases accountability and transparency, so documentation becomes crucial. Clear job descriptions, consistent expectations, and accurate scheduling records. These rules become enforceable in late 2025 into early 2026, and that gives organizations a short window to prepare. Now is the time to audit wage structures, review agency contracts, and get ahead of compliance before enforcement and penalties begin. So another poll question for you guys. Have any of you ever had employees raise concerns about pay differences between temp and full-time staff? Just give you about 15 seconds and then we'll go through it.
Also, I just wanted to refer back to the first poll, and around half of respondents said that they had already discussed the right to disconnect or pay equity issue in their organization, and half had not.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Gavin. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your responses. Gavin, do you want to discuss the results of this one really quick?
Okay. You know what? Let's come back to it.
Sounds great.
I'll come back to it when we pull up the next poll.
Perfect. So thank you, everyone, for your responses. So now that we've seen what the new equal pay rules require, let's talk about how organizations can actually prepare and stay compliant. So these are some practical strategies that will keep you compliant and prevent last-minute scrambling once enforcement starts. First, conduct a full pay equity audit. This means looking at your part-time, full-time, temporary, and agency comparable roles and asking a simple yet critical question. Are we paying people differently even though the work is the same? Consider this, a practical strategy to uncover hidden pay gaps before enforcement begins. For example, you could compare hourly rates for similar roles across employment categories to identify discrepancies. Next, standardize your pay matrices, especially for temporary help agency staff, because agencies can't pay less than your direct hires for the same work. You'll want clear, documented pay bands that apply equally across both groups. This protects you, it protects the agency, and ultimately ensures that no one accidentally creates a compliance gap. Third, set up a workflow for handling employee pay review requests. Remember, once an employee asks, you only have 90 days to provide a formal response. That isn't a very tight turnaround if you don't already have a process in place. So map out who receives the request, who reviews it, and what documentation you rely on, and who signs off. The clearer this workflow is, the faster and more confidently you'll respond. Finally, compliance isn't a one-time fix. It requires ongoing monitoring. Roles evolve, duties change, and staffing models shift, which means wage equity can drift out of alignment if you're not checking it regularly. Building quarterly or annual review into your HR cycles ensure you stay compliant and avoid surprises when enforcement intensifies in 2025 or in 2026. So back to you, Navdeep.
Thanks, Victoria. So this slide highlights recent and upcoming federal legislative changes under the Canada Labour Code. These measures expand employee entitlements and strengthen workplace protections. Starting December 12, 2025, employees in federally regulated workplaces who have completed 3 months of continuous employment will be entitled to 3 days of paid leave following a pregnancy loss. In case of a still work, employees can take up to 8 weeks of leave. The first 3 days are paid and the remaining leave will be unpaid. However, the employee's job is fully protected during this period. This represents a significant shift towards regulating the emotional and physical impact of pregnancy leave. The leave can be used for each pregnancy with no annual limit. Next, the government is launching a new 15-week shared adoption benefit, which allows adoptive parents to divide time away from work more flexibly. This is designed to bring parity with parental leave, supports, and help families transition smoothly. Next is EI waiting period. For a defined period, the 1-week period for employment insurance benefits is waived. Employees can access EI support immediately, and employers should note this temporary adjustment, which is from March 30th, 2025 to April 11, 2026. Another big update here, employees may receive 20 additional weeks of regular benefits up to a maximum of 65 weeks if there is a gap between June 15, 2025 and April 11, 2026, and employee is considered a long tenured worker. Next, let's talk about harassment and violence. So starting January 1st, 2026, the Canada Labour Code requires a review of harassment and violence provisions every 5 years. This means you need to update your policies, training, reporting mechanism, and compliance documentation once the guideline is released. Together, these legislative changes reinforce Canada's commitment to employee well-being, family support, and safe workplaces. I encourage each of you to take a proactive approach in incorporating these requirements into your HR and compliance process. So, how do we turn these legislative updates in action? Let's explore practical strategies for implementing all of these initiatives in your workplace. The focus is on updating your system, policies, and compliance frameworks so you're ready when these measures take effect. So first, make sure your leave tracking systems are updated to reflect the new entitlements coming into effect on December 12, 2025, including the pregnancy loss leave, extended bereavement leave, and 15-week shared adoption benefit. Updating your systems early help you avoid errors and ensures your team stays compliant. Next, check your payroll systems to make sure they can process the new shared adoption benefit and during EI waiting period waiver. This might be technical, but getting it right ensures your employees receive their benefits promptly and without disruption. You should also update your workplace policies and employee handbook. Make sure your policies, benefit description, and compliance statements reflect these legislative changes. Then communicate clearly within your employees through announcements, FAQs, or short briefings so they understand what is available to them and how to access it. Managers play a key role in applying these changes consistently. Provide them with training so they know how to support these employees with these changes. For the upcoming harassment and violence prevention framework updates in 2026, start reviewing your current system now. Strengthen reporting process, evaluate the quality and frequency of your training, and make sure your procedures are aligned with the evolving standards. This way, you'll be ahead of curve when new federal guidelines comes out. Finally, stay connected to federal updates throughout 2025 and 2026. By monitoring your information, you can adjust your policies, system, and process quickly, keeping your organization fully compliant and ready to support your employees. So on this slide, I have captured some major employment-related initiatives from the federal budget 2025. So first, the government is moving to restrict non-compete agreements in federally regulated workplaces with consultations planned for next year. Second, there is a crackdown on employee misqualification, ensuring workers are properly recognized and protected. The federal government will invest 77 million over 4 years to address employee misqualification and increase penalties for wage theft. Third, a payroll modernization pilot will test ways to streamline employer reporting and reduce administrative burden. Fourth, new funding is being directed towards credential recognition, training, upskilling initiatives to prepare workers for a changing economy. Next, review your RRSP, RRIF, and TFSA investment rules ahead of 2027 changes. Ensure pension governance and risk management policies comply with the enhanced oversight powers of the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. And finally, amendments to Bill C-58 will reinforce restrictions on replacement workers during labor disruption. Take note, which of these initiatives could affect your organizations right away and how prepared are you?
Okay, so while we're launching that poll there, I'll just review the results from the previous poll where we asked, have any of you had employees raise concerns about pay differences between temp and full-time staff? So 13 of you said that you have noted those concerns, and 35 of you said that you had not noted any concerns.
Very
Okay.
interesting.
Mhm. Okay, so Kevin, you should be able to give the results on the next poll.
Yeah, I'll just keep providing the results from the previous poll when we launch the next poll, I think.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Gavin.
So let's walk through key strategies employers and pension plan administrators should consider in light of 2025 federal budget. First, review your employment contracts and workforce classifications. The government is introducing restrictions to non-compete agreements for federally regulated employers and increasing enforcement against misqualification of employees as independent contractors. Conducting an audit now will help you stay ahead of the expected enforcement in 2026 and ensure compliance in labor code updates. Second, update your payroll and HR system. The budget introduces a real-time payroll reporting pilot to better assess employment insurance eligibility. Ensuring your systems are ready will take the transition smoother, avoid compliance issues, and improve accuracy in reporting. Plan training and upskilling initiatives. The budget provides funding incentives for union training, apprenticeships, and workforce reskilling programs. Aligning your internal training programs with these incentives not only supports employee growth, but also help attract and retain talent. For the pension plan administrators, it is important to review retirement plan investments and governance. Simplified rules for RRSPs, RRS, and TFAs coming in 2027, and there is new venture and growth capital catalyst initiative that pension funds may participate in. Make sure your investment policies and governance framework are aligned with these upcoming changes and OHSA's enhanced oversight requirements. Finally, keep monitoring legislative updates, including Bill C-58 and other federal labor law amendments to clients and mitigate risk. Taking these proactive steps now will position your organization to adapt smoothly and leverage the opportunities in the budget. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Navdeep. So let's take a look at the key updates in Ontario that are important for the organizations to be aware of. These changes affect HR practices, employee rights, and employer responsibilities. I'll walk you through each point on this slide and provide a bit more context. So let's dive deeper into the specifics of Ontario's job posting requirements. These will become effective on January 1st, 2026. These updates will impact all employers with 25 or more employees. It's important to get prepared for these changes as they're designed to increase transparency, fairness, and accessibility in the hiring process. The first key requirement is that employers must disclose the expected compensation or salary range in their job posting. This ensures that candidates have a clear understanding of the pay range for a position before they apply. It promotes fairness and transparency. It also helps to avoid any potential frustration during the hiring process when candidates may have a different expectation. Next, employers must remove Canadian experience requirements from job postings. This is a move to help create a more inclusive job market by removing unnecessary barriers for qualified individuals who may not have Canadian work experience but still bring valuable skills from other regions. It helps to ensure that the job market is open to talent from diverse backgrounds. Employers are also required to disclose if AI is being used in the hiring process. With the rise of AI, tools for screening resumes and conducting initial assessments, this requirement ensures that candidates are aware of how their applications are being evaluated. This transparency is essential for building trust and ensuring that AI is used ethically in hiring decisions. Another requirement is for employers to clearly state whether the role is for a current vacancy or a future vacancy. This provides clarity to candidates and helps them understand whether the position is immediately available or is part of a future hiring process. It ensures no confusion and allows candidates to make informed decisions about their applications. Employers must also notify candidates who have been interviewed within 45 days after the interview. This requirement ensures that candidates receive timely feedback, which is important for both their job search and their overall experience with your company. You'll want to set up an efficient system for tracking and notifying candidates within the required time frame. Lastly, employers must retain a job posting and applications for a period of 3 years. This is a part of the broader trends towards improving accountability and ensuring that records are available in case of audits or disputes. It is essential to have a good record to comply with this requirement. As a helpful tip, it's a good idea to set up a workflow to ensure that candidates are notified within the required 45-day period. This will help make the compliance process smoother and reduce the risk of overlooking any candidate communication. So now that we've covered what the new requirements will look like, let's shift to practical steps you can begin implementing right away. So these strategies will help ensure you're compliant well before the January 2026 deadline, and they'll also strengthen your overall hiring practices. First, let's look at your actions that you can take to prepare for compensation disclosure. The starting point is having consistent salary bands. Standardizing these and uploading them into your HIRS or applicant tracking system will make it easy for hiring managers to access correct ranges quickly. Next, update your job posting template so that the salary or salary range becomes a required field. This helps remove any guesswork and ensures no posting goes live without the required information. Finally, remember that disclosure isn't about just the posting. It extends into the interviews. Training hiring managers to explain salary ranges in a clear and consistent manner helps prevent mixed messaging and ensures alignment across the team. So another poll question, how many of you already include compensation ranges in your job posts? And Gavin, if you don't mind sharing the results from the previous poll.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the previous poll question was, which of the initiatives below do you see impacting your organization most immediately? So employee misclassification, that had the most selected, followed by payroll modernization, followed by amendments to Bill C-58, followed by more or less a tie between restricted non-compete agreements and credential recognition.
Nice. So pretty all over the place for those. So that'll be very interesting to see how that pans out. So thank you, Gavin. I'll move on and then we'll come back to these poll questions later. So let's talk about removing Canadian experience requirements, which is a major step towards more equitable hiring. So start by reviewing your current job postings and job descriptions. Remove any requirement that explicitly states or even implies that Canadian experience is needed. This type of language will very soon be non-compliant. Shift your focus to competency-based evaluations. So instead of prioritizing when someone gained experience, evaluate what they can do. This includes recognizing and valuing international training, education, and certifications. Finally, ensure your hiring managers are trained in skills-based interviewing and are aware of unconscious biases that they may surface when reviewing international candidates. The goal is to create a more inclusive and more objective evaluation process. With regards to AI use in hiring, the first step here is to inventory all AI or automated tools you use throughout your recruitment process. This is essential because as AI tools become more prevalent, we need to understand exactly which tools are in use and how they impact hiring decisions. We recommend adding a brief AI use statement to every job posting. This statement should clearly outline what AI tools are being used in the hiring process and what the role of these tools are, whether it's for screening resumes, evaluating candidates, or even assisting in interview scheduling. Now, you are not required to list the exact name of the AI tool you are using. You're just required to state if AI is being used. A generic statement will suffice this requirement as of right now. It's crucial that candidates understand how AI is involved. Finally, regularly review the AI tools you're using to ensure they remain fair, accurate, and compliant, especially with regards to privacy regulations. This is not a one-time check. Consistent monitoring is necessary to address any biases, inaccuracies, or potential privacy concerns. So moving on to the next strategy, clarifying whether the role is a current or future vacancy. When posting job openings, we recommend adding a required field in your ATS to indicate whether the position is a current opening or a future hiring need. This will help ensure transparency in your recruitment process and provide clarity to candidates about whether the role is immediately available or if it's a future opportunity. In addition to the ATS update, we also suggest adding clear, one-line statement in the job posting itself to clarify the vacancy type. For example, you could state, "This role is currently available," or "This is a future hiring need with potential openings in XYZ month or quarter." This will reduce confusion for job seekers. Lastly, make sure that all necessary approvals confirm the vacancy status before the job is posted. This ensures that the information is being shared as accurate, and it prevents any misunderstandings with the candidates who may apply for a position that is not yet available. All right, for the applicant tracking system for notifications, we recommend setting up reminders in your ATS at the 30, 40, and 45 days after an interview. This ensures that recruiters don't miss critical windows for follow-up with candidates who are waiting to hear back. Timely communication is key for maintaining a positive candidate experience. It's also helpful to use standardized templates for your rejections, updates, and potential delays. This ensures that candidates receive consistent and professional communication regardless of the outcome. These templates can help streamline your workflow and save time while ensuring a clear and respectful communication with the candidates. Lastly, track your follow-up compliance monthly and include these numbers in recruiter key performance indicators. Holding recruiters accountable for timely follow-ups can improve your overall candidate engagement and help ensure no one falls through the cracks. The next strategy is focused on retaining postings and applications for a period of at least 3 years. For compliance purposes and auditing purposes, it is essential to configure your ATS to retain job postings, applications, and any relevant notes for a full 36 months. This is typically required by law in many jurisdictions, and keeping records for this duration can help avoid issues with data compliance down the road. Ensure that only authorized personnel can access this data by implementing secure access controls. This protects sensitive candidate information and reduces the risk of data breaches. Additionally, document a clear retention standard operating procedure, or SOP, to establish guidelines for those who can access and manage the records. Finally, automate an archive and deletion of records once they reach the 3-year mark. Automation can streamline the process, reduce the likelihood of human error, and ensure that your organization stays compliant with data privacy. It's also important to set clear guidelines for this process in your SOP. Now, let's turn our attention to a new regulation that came into effect on July 1st, 2025. For employers in Ontario with over 25 employees, this regulation requires employers to provide specific pre-employment disclosures to all new hires, ensuring greater transparency and consistency during the onboarding process. So what do employers need to do to provide candidates before they start their employment? There are 4 key pieces of information that must be disclosed. The first item on the list is the employer legal name and contact details. This ensures that candidates know exactly who they're working for and have a way to reach the employer should they have any questions or concerns. Next, the employer must disclose the work location and the initial hours of work. This provides clarity for candidates about where they'll be working and what their expected schedule will be when they start. It's important that this information is specific to avoid any further confusion. The third requirement is to clearly outline the starting wage or commission. This ensures that the compensation expectations are aligned before the candidate starts, promoting transparency and trust from day one. Finally, employers must provide details on the pay period and pay day. Candidates should know when they will be paid and how often, whether it's bi-weekly, monthly, etc. That way there's no surprises regarding their earnings. So back to another poll question. How many of you already include these details in your pre-employment communications? And Gavin, I'll hand it over to you to discuss the previous poll.
Sure. So the previous question was how many of you already include compensation ranges in your job posts? So 24 of you said that you do, and 21 of you said that you do not.
Very, very interesting. Thank you, Gavin. So we'll come back to this one. For now, these pre-employment disclosures are designed to standardize the hiring process, ensuring both legal compliance and a smooth, transparent onboarding experience. By making sure that these 4 pieces of information are clearly communicated, you'll help set clear expectations for new hires, reducing potential misunderstandings, and ensure consistency across your recruitment process. To stay compliant with this new regulation, here are some steps you can take. Make sure that all offers and communications include these forms, so no important details are overlooked. It might be helpful to integrate this into your ATS or onboarding platform to automate the process. Keep a record of the pre-employment disclosures being made to each candidate. This ensures that you have necessary documentation in case of any disputes or audits that may come up down the road. By implementing these required disclosures, you'll not only ensure compliance with Ontario's new law, but also foster a positive onboarding experience for your new hires. Clear communication from the start leads to a better employee relation and fewer surprises during the transition into a new job. So back over to you, Deep.
Great insights, Victoria. Let's now shift our focus on the leave entitlements and protections. So first, we have long-term illness leave. Employees who are dealing with extended illness may be entitled to up to 27 weeks of unpaid leave if they have 13 or more weeks of service with the company. This allows employee the time they need to recover without the fear of losing their job. It's important to be aware that this leave is unpaid, so clear communication and understanding are essential for both the parties. Next, let's talk about placement of child leave, which applies to employees who are adopting or assuming guardianship of a child. Employees who have been employed for at least 13 weeks are entitled to up to 16 weeks of unpaid leave for this purpose. This leave allows employees to bond with and care for their new child without risk of losing their job. It applies equally to adoption, surrogacy, and legal guardianship, ensuring families have the time they need to adjust. Employees must provide at least 2 weeks of written notice to their employer before starting their leave. Both these leaves are unpaid and job protected, meaning the employee's position and benefits are safeguarded while they are away. Finally, we must talk about employers' responsibility and penalties. You are legally required to comply with these leave entitlements and protections. So failing to adhere to the leave policies outlined can result in penalties. This could involve fines, legal action, or reputational damages. It is crucial that we not only understand these entitlements, but also ensure proper documentation and compliance within our organization. Here is a practical tip for managing these new leaves. First, let's make sure your employee handbook and company policies are updated to include new leave entitlements. This ensures employees know their rights, managers know the process, and your organization stays compliant. Second, as an employer, you can request evidence that is reasonable in these circumstances to support a leave. For example, a doctor's note for illness leave or adoption, guardianship documents or placement of a child leave. The key is to be consistent and fair in what you ask for. Updating your policies and clarifying evidence requirements keep the process smooth, protects the organization, and ensures employees feel supported while exercising their right. Next, we are going to look at an operational requirement that goes into effect on January 1st, 2026. It relates specifically to cleaning records for washroom facilities. These requirements are designed to support health and safety and compliance standards, and they also help ensure you're always audit ready. There are 3 important details that must be followed with regard to cleaning records. So first, cleaning records must be posted in a visible location or electronic format. Second, the record must clearly show the date and the time of the last two cleanings. This ensures that anyone viewing the log can quickly see the most recent activity and confirm that cleaning is happening at the required frequency. And the staff initials of the person who performed each cleanings are required. This adds accountability and traceability, making it easy to follow up if needed. Another key requirement is that cleaning records must be kept for at least 3 years. This applies to inspection and compliance purpose. It's not enough to simply post records each day. There must be a reliable system for storing them long term. These elements make the records both transparent and practical for operational oversight. In addition to what's posted, we recommend maintaining a master log that is separate from the posted record. This ensures continuity, accuracy, and readiness. That means a master log helps prevent gaps and maintain consistent documentation, resulting in a clean audit trail. Another important change coming in 2026 affects temporary help agencies and recruiters. This is about licensing requirements under the Employment Standards Act, and it directly impacts compliance and cost planning. The changes will take for new applications submitted on or after January 1st, 2026. This is a province-wide change, not sector-specific. If your organization or your staffing partner hold these licenses, the update is directly relevant. The licensing term is being extended from 1 year to 2 years for all new renewals. This not only reduces the administrative burden of annual renewals, also means organizations must plan for a longer compliance cycle. Existing licenses issued prior to January 1st, 2026 remain under the current 1-year time frame. When those licenses expire in 2026, any renewal application will be governed by the new rules. The fee structure is changing as well. So application and renewal fee will increase from $750 annually to $1,500 biannually. While the cost doubles per renewal, it aligns with the extended 2-year licensing period. For organizations that apply for a license prior to 2026 but do not have their license until after January 1st, 2026, that license will be issued for only 1 year, not for 2 years. Ontario is proposing a new regulation under Healthcare Staffing Agency Reporting Act 2025, requiring licensed temporary help agencies that place RNs, RPNs, and PSWs in hospitals or long-term care homes to report aggregate administrative billing information, or the difference between what agency charge facilities and what they pay the worker, broken down by profession and location. Public feedback was invited from October 20 to November 10, 2025, and it's currently analyzing possible administrative and compliance costs that may result from the regulatory proposal. Now that we've covered the key changes to temporary help agencies and recruiter licensing, the 2-year term and updated $1,500 fee, let's discuss the practical strategies to manage these changes effectively in 2026. First, plan for the $1,500 biannual fee in your compliance budget. For organizations holding multiple licenses, update your internal cost model so there are no surprises when renewals come due. And second, review your licensing calendar carefully. Identify license expiry dates to avoid being caught under the old 1-year transitional rules. Time new applications strategically to maximize the benefit of 2-year term. Third, If your organization plans to hold both temporary help agency and recruiter license, align application with renewal dates within the 2-year cycle. This way, you can avoid paying extra fee and make the most of the single fee opportunity. Fourth, maintain clean auditable license records. This includes workflows for healthcare gap billing reporting, if applicable. Good records protect your organization and make renewals seamless. And finally, communicate these changes internally. Train payroll, recruiting, and compliance teams on the 2026 rule changes. Update policy handbook and vendor agreements to reflect new licensing term and fee structure. These strategies ensure organizations don't just react to the new licensing rules, they anticipate them by budgeting early, aligning applications, strengthening records, and training staff. HR leaders can turn regulatory change into a smooth, well-managed process. Over to you, Victoria.
Let's look at how Ontario is making it easier for regulated professionals licensed in other provinces to practice here and vice versa. Starting January 1st, 2026, Ontario will lead the country with as-of-right rules, allowing professionals to begin practicing without delay. Work in Ontario within 10 days under the updated process. Regulated professionals who are licensed elsewhere in Canada can begin working in Ontario within 10 days of submitting their application. This allows experienced professionals to join the workforce quickly without waiting for the full licensing process to be completed. The scope of this application. So this applies across a wide range of sectors where more than 50 regulatory authorities and over 300 certifications are included. Many trades are fully covered. Only selected healthcare professions are currently included, with plans for further expansion. Overall, the impact remains significant. Ontario is also expanding reciprocal agreements, making it easier for Ontario licensed workers to practice in other provinces. The goal here is simple: streamline licensing, reduce red tape, and maintain safety standards, and creating a more mobile and flexible workforce across Canada. So here's how it works. Once a worker applies to the Ontario Regulatory Authority, if the application is complete, they are deemed certified within 10 days. That deemed certification lasts 6 months, during which they can work while completing Ontario's full licensing requirements. There are 3 conditions where certification ends earlier: if the person is fully certified, if the application is denied, or if the regulatory authority discovers that information in the application is inaccurate, and then would be deemed that the certificate is revoked. For HR leaders, this change not only enables faster hiring and access to skilled talent, but also requires proactive action. Organizations must identify which roles are covered under the 300-plus certifications, integrate deemed certified employees into the compliance workflows, and maintain accurate records of their deemed certification status. So now that we've covered the labor mobility rule and its 10-day deemed certification process, let's talk about how organizations can turn these changes into actionable strategies for hiring and the workforce planning. First, create a streamlined workflow for candidates using the 10-day deemed certification. This ensures that they can start working quickly while completing the full licensing requirements, reducing downtime in crucial roles. Second, expand your sourcing across all provinces. With reciprocal agreements and these faster certification rules, you can tap into talent pools nationwide, fitting skilled and regulated roles faster than ever before. Third, monitor the 6-month deemed certification period closely. This helps avoid compliance gaps and ensures employees complete full licensing before the deemed certification ends. Fourth, verify that each application is complete and maintained through records. This is critical in case deemed certification certification ends early, either due to full certification, denial, or inaccurate information. Proper documentation protects both the employee and your organization. Fifth, build direct communication channels with key regulatory bodies. Timely updates from regulators help you stay on top of changes, clarify rules, and avoid delays in certification or compliance. Finally, support Ontario employees pursuing work in other provinces under the reciprocal agreements. This ensures they understand the requirements, deadlines, and processes, helping your organizations retain talent while benefiting from interprovincial mobility. In short, these strategies turn the TEND deemed certification process into a competitive advantage. Fast-track hiring, recruit nationwide, track certification windows, maintain documentation, engage regulators, and prepare staff for mobility. These strategies help your organization leverage the new rules while staying compliant and competitive in the regulated workforce. Over to you, Navdeep.
All right. Let's talk about Ontario's Working for Workers Act 7. Working for Workers Act 7 is one of the most comprehensive workplace reforms Ontario has seen. Introduced in May 2025 and expected to take effect in 2026, this act builds on earlier Working for Workers Act legislation with new measures that touch health and safety, training, as well as employment standards. Let's walk through the highlights. Faster access to training and upskilling. A major focus is on helping workers transition into in-demand jobs more quickly. This includes streamlined access to training programs and funding to support upskilling. For HR, this means a stronger pipeline of qualified candidates in critical sectors. Recognizing the impact of trade pressures, the Act includes measures to protect Ontario workers in industries affected by U.S. tariff. This includes involving retraining, financial support, and targeted protections for vulnerable sectors. There are few health and safety changes, and they are in effect. So first, administrative penalties. If this change is adopted, provincial inspectors will be empowered to issue administrative penalties against a person who has contravened or failed to comply with the provision of Ontario Health and Safety Act. In order of an inspector or a director or an order of the Ministry Labour, the amount of the administrative penalties will be determined by future regulations. The Workplace Safety and Insurance Board will now reimburse an employer for the cost of defibrillator if the Workplace Safety Insurance Act requires the employer to equip the workplace with one. Then there are new rules under Workplace Insurance Act that are in effect. First, employers cannot make false or misleading statements to the board about anyone's claim. Breaking this rule can lead to fines and other penalties. Second, if someone is convicted of 2 or more counts of the same offense in one legal case, they can face up to $750,000 for each count. Past offenses or repeated non-compliance can increase the penalty. Starting 26, Employment Standard Act are now enforced. Under the new rules, employers may lay off non-unionized employees for up to 35 weeks in any 52 weeks period and under certain conditions for up to 52 weeks within a 78-week period without it counting as a permanent termination. Employees affected by group layoff of 50 or more people are entitled to 3 days of unpaid leave. They can use this time for job hunting, attending interviews, or training to help them find new work. Employees should give their employer at least 3 days notice before taking this leave whenever possible. The Working for Workers Act 7 is not just incremental, it's transformative. It touches every corner of HR compliance, safety, training, and employment standards and workforce mobility. While some provisions were previously under consideration, they now have been passed into law. By 2026, the organizations will need to update their policies, budgets, and workforce planning to align with these new requirements. And that wraps up my update. This from my side. Thanks for following along. I'll now hand it over to Victoria, who will walk us through the key takeaways.
Thank you, Navdeep. So in 2026, several new regulations will come into play that will have a significant impact on HR practices and compliance. It's important for organizations to start preparing now to avoid any last-minute scrambling. HR departments will need to update their policies and practices to stay ahead of these changes. With the growing focus on employee well-being and the right to disconnect gaining momentum. This means employees will have the right to not be expected to respond to work communications outside of normal working hours. This shift will likely change workplace culture by promoting work-life balance and reducing burnout. Pay equity and wage transparency have become top priorities for organizations. Employees now expect transparency regarding how pay is determined, and disparities in pay will be under greater scrutiny. It is no longer optional to be transparent about wages. It's an expectation and a legal requirement in many areas. Recent reforms in leave entitlements and employment insurance require HR systems to be updated immediately. These changes affect how HR processes leave requests, benefits, and the overall management of time off for employees. As workers' rights continue to evolve, there is an increased focus on their protection and safety. HR teams must ensure their policies align with new safety standards and worker protection laws, especially as workplaces are becoming more diverse and complex. Labor mobility is expanding across borders, and licensing requirements are becoming more stringent. Employers will need to adapt their hiring processes to comply with new regulations, especially if they are hiring international talent or working across different regions with varying rules. Recent signals from the federal budget show that enforcement of workplace regulations will tighten, and there will be fewer loopholes for the organizations to exploit. Employers should prepare for increased oversight and ensure that their policies are compliant with the latest laws. Finally, HR leaders must act now to build and strengthen their compliance infrastructure. This means developing systems, training, and resources effectively. As we move forward, it is clear that HR leaders have a critical role in preparing their organizations for these key changes. By staying ahead of these developments, you can ensure your organization remains compliant and ready for the future. So prior proceeding to our final poll results and our Q&A, as we wrap up today's session, we want to make sure that you know that you're not on your own as you begin navigating all these upcoming changes. If you'd like more specific guidance and have questions that do not get addressed in our Q&A today, or even just want to explore what these updates mean for your specific organization, we're here to help. Simply scan the QR code on the screen, and it will connect you directly to one of our experts at Pivotal. Whether you need support with compliance planning, HR system updates, or just want to talk through a unique challenge in your workplace, our team is ready to assist. So feel free to take a moment now to scan the code, bookmark a link, or your HR colleague, commit, and stay compliant. So I'll leave that out for about 15 seconds, and then we'll move on. Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground today, and I hope everyone is taking away some of the valuable insights. Now, we'd love to open the floor to your questions, and if you haven't done so already, please feel free to type it into the Q&A chat box. It'll be located at the top of your screen, and we'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can in the time we have left. I also want to thank our moderator, Gavin, for delivering all our questions to Navdeep and I. You've been great. Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to you to share our poll results, and then we'll get right into Q&A.
Sure. So the last poll that we did had to do with the different employer and job information that's now required to be shared with employees. Includes a bunch of things, including the address of the employer, communicating pay periods and pay days, among other things. So the question was, how many of you already include these details in your pre-employment communications? And the vast majority of you, 29 respondents, said that you do, and 13 of you responded that you're not yet doing all of those things. So looks like most of you are on top of that. Yeah, most of you are on top of that. So let's get into the Q&A. The Q&A function on the top of the to submit your question. First question here is, if AI is not used in our company's recruitment process, does legislation require that our job postings say that we're not using AI?
That's a great question. I'm happy to take that one. So technically, no, it does not require you to state that you don't use it. It only requires that you state if you are using it. But our recommendation would be to standardize putting that messaging in anyway. It helps reduce confusion. It confirms clarity. It's just as beneficial to say we do not use this as you would say as we do use this. So I would say, even though it's not required to put that statement in, I think it's good business practice to include that messaging that you do not use AI. Either of you guys have anything else to add?
I think that's well said.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question here, regarding Canadian experience, which is prohibited now to include on job postings. For professions that are licensed, which include a whole bunch, can a job posting state that, for example, a doctor or a veterinary medicine degree is required with a valid Canadian license?
Okay,
Another great question. Over to you now.
I know there are lots of confusions about all this Canadian experience and what to avoid, what to answer. So for this particular, yes, for regulated professions in Canada, it's legally acceptable and standard practice to that require a specific degree.
Absolutely. So you can
because
100%.
That's not considered as Canadian experience, and that's a legal requirement for practicing the profession.
Absolutely. Well said, and I wouldn't add anything else to that.
Okay, next question, Gavin.
Okay, so next question. Does the 45-day rule apply? That is the 45-day rule around getting back to candidates that have applied for a job. Does that rule apply even if the candidate withdraws from consideration, maybe because they get another job or they're no longer interested?
So I can take this one. So if the candidate withdraws from the application process or the interview process, wherever you are at in the recruitment process, as long as you have that in writing that they have withdrawn, you don't need to send them an additional notification saying you've been rejected. If you don't have, like say they call you up and they say, hey, I'm dropping out of it, I'm withdrawing my application, I think best practice here would be just to send a follow-up email or communication just stating that we've received your note to withdraw your application, we wish you the best, and leave it at that, summarize it that way. That way you maintain compliance for yourself as well as ensure that communication with the candidate.
Okay. Next question. If a company has 2 locations, but the jobs or the job differs slightly between those locations, does equal pay for equal work apply? And I guess it's sort of a two-part question. That's the first question. And the next part is, are the sites allowed to have differences in pay if the jobs differ slightly?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's slightly different because there is it is also based on the cost of living options, and like market rates are different in divisions, and skill and sometimes it's in different locations based on their operations. So yes, it could be different, but as it says, equal pay for equal work. So the change, the difference in the living, gap in the living difference or the market rates or the organization build-up. So that would, I think, cover that equal pay for equal work kind of thing. So equal work. So each organization will have different kind of duties or different kind of responsibilities. So there could be slight difference, and that would be acceptable.
Very well said. Thank you, Nav.
All right, next question. Do internal job postings need to follow all these rules?
So I can take that one. No, this only applies to external job postings. Your internal job postings do not need to follow the new regulations that are coming into effect January 1st. So if you are posting for a promotional role and you're just posting to the individuals in your current company and your current staff, you don't have to include all these details.
Okay, next question. Where do I put the AI disclosure?
Victoria?
Yeah, so
You
I
wanna
can
take
take
that?
that. So the AI disclosure should be included on all job postings. And then if you feel necessary, it can also be discussed in the interview if there's sometimes there's AI taking notes in a Teams meeting and you want to disclose that there is an AI bot doing a transcript for this meeting in the interview, or there's something else being included, but the AI should be included in all job descriptions, or sorry, all job postings. And again, as I stated previously, it can be a generic statement that just says AI is used in our recruitment process, or AI is used to screen resumes, however you'd like to write it. As the legislation stands right now, you don't have to be specific to exactly what it says. You just have to disclose the presence of AI in your recruitment process.
Alrighty. Next question. Do all job postings need a salary range?
So I can take that one. Yes and no. So all job postings are required to reach or to state the salary range, except for jobs that exceed the $200,000 mark. Those ones are exempt from listing the salary or a range. And then it's worth noting that the salary range cannot exceed $50,000 when it's posted.
Okay, let's see here. Are bonuses counted towards the salary range? I guess that's kind of related to the last question. So if it's a bonusable type position.
Yeah, so I'll expand on that. So if it is a part of the overall compensation plan and it's considered the dollar figure attached to it, yes, the bonus would be included in that range. So it's worth noting if you include a discretionary bonus or a hiring bonus or any of those things that are dollar figures that are directly attached to the compensation for, like, say, an annual salary, that would be counted towards the range for the posting. This is in part of they didn't want people posting or employers posting roles, say, 50 to 100,000, but then having the flexibility to be like, oh, well, we really like this person, we're going to give them a $50,000 bonus, and that puts them way out of the range that's been set in the legislation, because they argued if you had posted at the range from 100 to 150, you may have received other that's interested in the compensation band. So they've included those dollar figure incentives to the compensation plan in the overall range. But excellent question, because it's come up a lot, I think, with the individuals I've been working with, and I'm sure with you guys as well.
And ask another question that relates to that, sort of an expansion on that. We talked about this a little bit within our team. So when posting ranges, is that salary information, or does it matter if it's posting or if it's entered into like a specific field in your ATS or that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it doesn't say you're using like Indeed and you have like that mandatory field where you can put the salary range in. It doesn't necessarily have to be there, although I would suggest it because that helps with the search functions for people applying. But as long as it's included in the job description or the job post that you're actually publicizing, then it would be considered compliant. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in its designated field for whatever you're using, as long as the presence of it exists.
Gotcha, okay. Next one, is the right to disconnect policy mandatory or optional?
I can take that. So right to disconnect policy, it's not enforced yet, but when it's enforced, yes, it is mandatory. So it's already enforceable in Ontario, and this is about federal. So when it's enforced, most likely in early 2026, it will be mandatory. All the employers, they have to have this policy, right to disconnect.
Okay, maybe we'll do one more question here, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so to be considered a long tenured worker, actually, I'm not gonna answer. I'm not gonna put that one in. Though that one wasn't terribly clear. I'll move on here. Is this 3-day leave? So in addition to other paid leaves, such as sick leave or personal leave?
So yes, this 3-day leave is available because it's only and only for the pregnancy loss. So it's separate from all other leaves.
Excellent. So Gavin, I think we're all done with questions for now then.
I think so.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank everybody for that. Again, if you need more specific assistance or we didn't get a chance to get to your question, you can scan the QR code on this screen and it'll take you to our insert page where you can get more specific, targeted information. And with that, before we close it, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for your engagement and the thought today. These upcoming changes in the compliance landscape are significant, and your willingness to stay informed and proactive makes all the difference for your organization and your employees. We hope today's session gave you clarity, direction, and practical steps you can take back to your teams. On behalf of the entire Pivotal team, thank you again for joining us. Also, I wanted to mention that this session has been recorded, and a link will be shared with all participants to review at a later time if needed. I want to thank my co-presenter Nav and our moderator Gavin for all of your assistance today. It's been greatly appreciated. And of course, the entire team behind the scenes who made this all come together and be successful. We look forward to supporting you as these changes roll out, and we're always here if you need expertise or guidance. I wish everybody a wonderful rest of your days. Thank you, guys.